Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of After the Hack. After the Hack is a limited podcast series where we'll be breaking down the new ITV drama about the phone hacking scandal. We're going to be deep diving into the hack and what came after. So in 2002 now, in the world of DCS Dave Cook, who is assigned to investigate the unsolved murder of a private detective, Daniel Morgan. As he's drawn deeper into the case, Dave finds himself under surveillance by News of the World as he tries to untangle the messy web of media and murder. So we're in a very different place now at the start of this episode. We're out of the sort of journalism world, which is presumably the world we're all probably a bit more familiar with, and we're in a kind of policing drama. So there's quite a kind of sharp turn into something different. Let's start from the top and do kind of gut reactions. How did we feel about this second episode?
Yeah, I thought it was a real night and day difference with the first episode in terms of the tone and the way it's put together. This is a real belt and braces police investigation kind of drama, which if you watch it immediately after the first episode with David Tennant doing lots of winks to camera and kind of weird graphical effects going on, it feels like you are watching a completely different show, which I guess in some ways you kind of are, because that's the way the producers intended it. But no, I found it was a really interesting way to jump into the story of the Daniel Morgan murder, albeit just from within the perspective of the police investigations. I thought it was good that they showed from very early on the concerns about the corruption within the Met itself and how that would hinder the investigation. There's the comment really early on where they're putting the team together and they say, we want mostly women on this team because there's too many men in the lodge. So they're already aware that, you know, this is a corrupt police force and trying to do these investigations is going to be hamstrung by so many things. And that goes throughout the episode. But yeah, I enjoyed that it was probably, it made more sense as a kind of piece of television in terms of what it was trying to tell and the story and how it's put together. So, yeah, I enjoyed it for that.
Yeah, it feels a bit more sort of classic, almost, yeah, which is interesting. Femi?
I wasn't a fan. I think I needed more of the hand-holding we had in that first episode just to basically follow it, because there were so many moving pieces and so many different characters, so many names being thrown in without actually seeing the faces of the people you're referring to. So following it as a narrative, knowing who to care about, knowing who the victim is here, it was kind of lost on me. And seeing the relevance to the concept of the hack wasn't really there.
Yeah, you sort of felt like you've been dropped into this very different world. Yeah. Peter?
Well, can I ask you, because this is my area of expertise, I've done a 20-part podcast and a book on it. What did you make of it, Miss Eka?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit biased in the sense that I don't love a policing drama. Like, it's not really my thing as much. I'm sorry, I've not watched Happy Valley, I've not watched Line of Duty, so I'm a bit less familiar with the archetype of policing drama as it is. But yeah, it did feel like quite a strong step change from what I still found annoying in the first episode, but then a quick change to, you know, a very different type of story. And even just small things like, you know, they've got chapters in it now. And I was like, why? why are you doing this, guys? Like...
Yeah. I mean, because I watched on Catch Up. If you don't, we don't know actually. Are there ad breaks then at these chapter titles? Because they're
just peppered throughout the episode at random.
So it's not incongruency with the natural ad breaks at all. It's just kind of like
They have some sort of thematic significance, like, you know, chapter 4, the editor is when they go and meet Rebecca Brooks. But other than that, it's just we wanted to put some text on screen.
Yeah,
I was baffled.
Yeah,
about that. But yeah, I mean,
did you get them? Take out Femi's point, were there too many names? Do you have any idea who anybody was beyond Dave Cook? And I think briefly we see Alistair, don't we? Alistair Morgan in this episode, do we? No, we don't.
No, not in the first
We don't.
one,
No, we don't even see the brother of the guy who's murdered, who's the key sort of, campaigner for the last 38 years.
I mean, it's a collection of new people, new characters, not quite got the right idea about how they all fit together. The other thing that also felt unclear, but maybe I didn't watch it closely enough, was how Dave knew Nick. And I was like, I don't understand. They know each other? Like, what is this crossover episode now? So that also felt like not explained.
I think in keeping with the concept of Deadpool, it felt like just a random cameo for the sake of it. I couldn't understand what the link between the two characters. Like, why does he just happen to star on the same thing?
Well, I mean, without giving anything away, and just background, Dave Cook was quite a source of information for Nick Davis. I mean, the problem is he was a confidential source, and then partly through leaking stuff to me and to Nick, he gets arrested. This is really, I'm not giving anything away here. And he is silenced for the last 10 years because of talking to journalists, he gets arrested.
Yeah.
And so if you read Nick Davis's book, he's not mentioned, and much to Alistair's chagrin, I remember he looked in the index, Alistair Morgan, to see if Daniel was mentioned, right? And he isn't, but I think Nick did that to protect sources.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there's some interesting stuff that scratched an itch. You know, there's a spicy car chase where you're a bit like, oh, you know, when the news of the world is coming after him, you think you're getting somewhere, but then a lot of that drama then gets scaled back a bit, and that doesn't really keep going anywhere. So it did feel at times like the pacing was maybe a little bit frustrating. As well.
I think coming back to what Femi was saying about, like, we don't know what's really gone on here. What are they investigating? As a piece of TV, it's got all of the sort of tropes and staples of a police investigation. You've got the team assembled in the room with their little, you know, corkboard with all the pictures. You've got a chase. You've got meetings with your bosses. But all along, it's like, well, what are they investigating here? What happened?
Right.
When they first talk about the Daniel Morgan murder, they put static over the top of it, and it like fades away. So we're not really introduced to what is it they're investigating. What happened in 1987? It's sort of treated as literally background noise to, we're going to show a police investigation, which, you know, I didn't mind it. I like that sort of, you know, police procedural, come on, Gov, we got to do this thing now, and let's bug them and tap them and that sort of thing. Like, all those pieces were there, but like you said, Femi, the kind of core story was background noise.
Yeah, and it's just, it happens very, very fast with a lot of detail. If you think about, by comparison to a show like Line of Duty, we saw basically a season's worth of plot in one episode. Like you had the covert side of the investigation, the overt side of the investigation, all playing out, going on Newsnight, all that stuff happening, and then the reaction to that. That's a season of television.
Yeah.
It's Crime Watch, not Newsnight, but yeah.
Oh yeah, Crime Watch. Yeah.
It's a slightly different show.
Yeah, and interesting enough, Line of Duty references the podcast I did, you know, on the Daniel Morgan murder as, because I think in one of the episodes some of the detectives make a podcast. I don't know. It is an incredibly complicated story, and the thing is, it's Dave Cook, and he is very important to the revelations about phone hacking. But, and you know, he does disclose a lot, because what isn't explained, I don't think, is this all begins with Sudden Investigation, which is Daniel's company. It's maybe worth explaining this, because does this seem like an exciting story? So basically, Daniel ran a company with Jonathan Rees, you see briefly. They fell out. Jonathan Rees was big with corrupt police. It is alleged in the inquest that Jonathan Rees wanted Daniel killed. Anyway, he's the last person to see him live, lures him to this pub. Alistair comes down immediately suspicious of Jonathan Rees for many reasons, like there was a third party present and it was an axe. He's saying all these weird things. So he goes to tell a police officer who knew Daniel and says, I think Jonathan Rees is guilty. That police officer is Sid Fillery, who goes on to obstruct the original inquiry, leave the force and take Daniel's job. And so those two, Fillery and Rees, create Sudden Investigations as the one-stop shop for the dark arts of Fleet Street, starting in about 1989. Then your bank accounts, that police can get all the information about you. They work for the underworld as well. They start email hacking. They're starting original phone tapping and cell phone tapping without voicemail. They create Mazza Mahmood, right? Who's the fake sheikh. Anybody remember that? And he is undercover. They're bugging David Miller, having an affair. They're procuring burgled contents on Paddy Ashdown. They're all over. And what happens from 1989 onwards, this nexus of corrupt cops, private investigators, begin to dominate Fleet Street. Piers Morgan uses them when his News of the World editor in the mid-90s, takes them over to the Mirror. So for 10 years, 20 years, and Marin Chak, I think, is mentioned in this episode. He's the News of the World crime editor. They have this enormous power, unique in any media system I've known of, which is, and I was told this by photographers, if they targeted somebody, within a day they have their medical records, their bank records, they had trackers on their cars, they were into their voicemail interception, they would all, you could not have a private life. Completely. And I think you get a glimpse of that, don't you, with the Cook? There here is, I don't think you get the stakes quite, because he actually starts the fifth murder investigation. He's the front man for the fourth one. But this is the most dangerous murder investigation for the Met. You know, it's alleged corruption. These are very dangerous gangsters. I don't think you get, that was deeply secret, but News of the World, and it was me who pinned down the van to Mazza Mahmood's photographer, Bradley Page, before anybody else knows about it, before they know about it, because they're all over the comms. They're hacking everything. They have advanced intelligence. You see Jackie Hames, don't you, in this episode?
Yeah.
And she gets traumatized. Basically, Jackie Hames is the wife of Dave Cook. And her friend is, I think it could be better told, her friend Jill Dando was shot dead a few years previously, 3 years previously, in an assassination. And she was very traumatized by that. So when she sees a man in a van lifting up something, it's mentioned, but... And that
doesn't really come across, to be honest. They don't make that connection.
She's a very senior detective, so is he. And they're at risk. And I don't think we got quite the scale of that jeopardy.
I mean, we're just kind of seen her. She's just seen through the prism of being his wife.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we have much of a clue at all about.
She was murder scene. Yeah, she was on Crime Watch as a presenter, but she was murder scene detective.
Yeah, that's all that very rich, interesting background that makes her more of a three-dimensional character. Frankly, less of a kind of two-dimensional. I'm just here as your wife.
Yeah, which is so.
And I'll later leave you. So that he's sad. That makes her a much more three-dimensional, interesting character, and that's all missing.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, you get the connection to Jill Dando, but you don't get the how does she know Jill Dando?
Right.
Show us a bit of her. Again, use some B-roll. Use some.
Yeah.
Show us.
Endless archival footage, right?
Yeah. Show us them together. Make us feel a human connection to the people that we're supposed to care about.
Yeah.
And was the thing that I think is fundamentally missing from this show in both of the first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, don't they manipulate some archive? Or maybe I flash forward. I have seen some of the head ones, so let's not give that away. Yeah, I think maybe libel reasons. They did have that scene with, I've known about for years, obviously, the Rebecca Brooks scene, which is when he finds out he's being surveyed and he tracks it down, doesn't know it's Bradley Page, Maz Mahmood's photographer, but he knows it's News of the World. He confronts Rebecca Brooks, who's at a party with Sir John Stevens, who's the Met Commissioner. I think that and it came across quite well, didn't it? The fact that, but then she disappears.
Yeah. So lots of kind of loose ends or shallow bits that would be really great to get into that we don't. The other person who we see, of course, who you've just mentioned, Peter, as well, for the first time, is Rebecca Brooks. I found her a little bit sort of moustache twirly villain. And I'm not saying she should be this kind of really sympathetic character. Of course, she did some pretty awful things. But one of the good things, I think, about these dramas that cover these scandals, I was actually thinking about The People versus O.J. Simpson. It's another really good, brilliant crime drama based on, obviously, a very sensational true story, is that whilst there are lots of people who do awful, despicable things in that, they do find a way to make everyone three-dimensional and everybody have a story, regardless of whether or not we agree, of course, with the things that they do. O.J. Simpson is not a nice character by any stretch of the imagination, but we see him as a three-dimensional person. Yeah. Rebecca Brooks, again, maybe I'm not the most popular person in the room for saying she should be humanised a bit, but for the purposes of the story, maybe we need a bit more about her as well, I
think lots of those characterizations are a victim of the format of the show, where you're trying to fit these 2 sprawling universes of many, many different characters into 7 episodes. So when we're finally introduced to Rebecca Brooks in person, after she has already been mentioned in passing several times in the first episode with Nick Davies, you kind of have to collapse all of the reputation and notoriety of Rebecca Brooks into one 2-minute scene where she does have to come across as this kind of arch villain behind all of this different surveillance and intimidation and monstering. Yeah. And that's the only opportunity we have as the audience. And so those characterizations are a victim of a show where you have to do all of these things in as little time as possible.
So I don't actually have a massive issue with that, just because she's at work. Like she's not in a social setting. She's just being her as at work. And from my own experience with people that work on that side of the fence in terms of the media, a lot of them aren't really driven by moral concerns, and so they are just doing a job. They don't care. And so I think maybe not a specific desire to do evil, but that lack of you're just somebody's in my way. Like you're coming here, you're asking questions. I don't care about you, so I'm just gonna push you around whichever way I want. I think that tracks with my experience of people.
Yeah, and I think that conversation was useful to show that actually she there as a representative of the corporate strategy of News International, which is to protect our own at all costs, to avoid accountability, to try and suck up to public institutions to get information, and if they challenge us to, investigate and surveil and intimidate these people. So I thought that was good, like you say, in a sense that her presentation as it's almost a scene that would have worked better in the first episode when you're talking about the cover-up of phone hacking and the influence and power of News International as a media organisation. It's strange to then have that in a conversation about a police investigation when actually having that conversation, I know it obviously didn't happen in real life, but that pattern of, you know, we're going to dismiss everything you say, everything we do is all above board, we don't really know about you, you're alleging this person's done something, we don't really know that much about them, but we can promise you nothing's happened. That sort of stern, heavy-handed, very powerful and actually quite frightening corporate defence that Rebecca Brooks puts across in that scene was at the heart of the cover-up of phone hacking. So it's strange that that scene again is all condensed into a conversation with Dave Cook.
And it's interesting you pointed out the order, that not being in the first episode. And I think that is a fundamental flaw. Without looking at what happens later, I think if they'd have like started from grounding it in here's the problem, here's the big villain, here's the Murdoch, here's the Empire, here are the people that on the ground, the ordinary people that are being affected by this, being manipulated by this. Yes, in the opening episode, you get that first monologue from David Tennant along the lines of people don't know they're being abused by a cabal of journalists, politicians, and police. But I think if you had grounded it in, for example, the parents of the kid who died in terms of phone hacking, I think if you had grounded it in the family of Mr. Morgan, I think that would have made it feel more real, especially when you then compare it going back and forth with the Murdoch Empire. I think that would have felt really powerful.
Yeah.
I completely agree, and without being crass, we were just talking in the last episode about Deadpool. Go back to slightly more my genre as a boomer, Lord of the Rings. You know, you see the Shire and then bimbling along and have these parties again. You also see the Black Riders come, right?
Yeah.
You understand that the Shadows return to Mordor. You know who the bad guys are, and I do think that is missing, and you get a sense of it, but you have flashback to 2002, 4, you know. We're in 2009, we go back 7 years. It is complicated, I think, for the audience. Just on characterization, because I know those three players, right? Nick Davis, Dave Cook, and Rebecca Brooks had a wild night first in Hay with her in 2006, and then I was in a trial with her for 8 months. But she's very nice to me. She's incredibly charming. And her first line to me when I met her at Hay, and we didn't end up snogging or anything, but we were kind of, anyway, had a dancing and things like that, was everybody hates me.
Really?
She was at a Hay and White party, because the Guardian party, like, everybody hates me. And she was and she plays this vulnerability and charm, and, you know, and
because that doesn't come across, I would say, at all. Like she's
like
just this very, you know, self-assured person.
She's a tough cookie. I mean,
she must be.
The presentation and she can be furious about slam doors, you know, just whatever. I'm not defending her, but what is amazing is this feeling of empathy. You know. Yeah, how are you? You know, she that played very well with politicians. Yeah,
I can imagine.
And you're right, they just don't have the time. It may be worth saying, because it's the first time we've seen, I just wondered what you felt about the Dave Cook, Robert Carlyle performance. Now, when I heard about it, I thought, this is the most inappropriate bit of casting I can imagine, because I know Dave Cook, right? And I'm thinking the guy from Trainspotting, Dave Cook. Dave Cook is kind of big, guberous Scotsman, right?
Right.
Very quiet and actually, Robert Carlyle does a brilliant job. I mean, he's got a completely different accent. I think Carlyle's having a Glasgow accent, isn't he? Dave Cook's got a kind of southern Scottish accent. Right. But I am, and I like with, you know, to compliment these people, because, you know, there's lots of criticism we all have. It is amazing they got this on screen, given the subject matter. You know, it's not easy to get this done. Very controversial, a lot of pressure. I think Tennant did channel some energy of Nick Davis. Nick Davis, I knew. I thought that Robert Carlyle did a good job giving this. Well, what did you make of despite the complexity of what the hell's going on? Were you intrigued by the character of Dave Cook?
Yeah, and in some ways, I think I was slightly more intrigued than maybe Nick, despite the fact that in Nick, as a journalist as well, I maybe should see myself as more akin to Nick. I think, he was a kind of interesting sort of like figure in the sense of like, you know, is he going to get suckered into this case? Is he pursuing this case for the right reasons? Some of that is alluded to as it goes on as well, which is an interesting dimension to add to it as well. So in some ways, I think I was actually a bit drawn in. I think his situation with his family as well, and the family, you know, what happens there, I won't give anything away, also added a bit of breadth to him. So I actually think he was characterised in some ways a bit a bit better than our other protagonist, Nick. But just to quickly go back to the idea of beginnings as well and how we begin stories. And one of the things that I remembered when I was thinking about the O.J. Simpson Netflix drama as well is that starts with the news of the beating of Rodney King.
Yeah.
Which is this kind of really inflamed point of discussion around race. And so the story knows where to situate itself in what is going to be a very complicated and very morally difficult story around race. You know, this man, beat his wife to death. But there is also all these racial implications as well around the way in which black people are treated by the criminal justice system in the US. So that there's a smartness there and there's a deftness there in the way they know where to start the story and place it. And I kept thinking, I wish they'd been able to do something like that with this as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's been my biggest problem with both of these first two episodes, the first hacking episode and the first Daniel Morgan episode, is that they feel like, you were mentioning Lord of the Rings, where they go on a quest to beat a bad guy and save the world. These are quests without the context. They're going out to do something and investigate murders or investigate crime without there being a world around it to understand. There are so many times in both these episodes where people say to David Tennant, Nick Davies, or to Dave Cook, you don't know what you're up against. These are dangerous people. Everybody knew News International was a dangerous, corrupt organisation that would really come and try and get you if you went up against them. Everybody knew that Southern Investigations, South London Police, this dodgy world of dark arts and thugs, they knew what they were up against. They weren't under any confusion that, these are just normal people. Am I going to be? No, they knew that they were up against. So it's weird that the show has to feel like it needs to constantly remind you these are dangerous people, and that's a consequence of them not giving that wider story of this was the world of tabloids and hacking and abuse. This was the world of corrupting police investigations and the interrelationship between private detectives and the police. That's just not there. So these are quests without a world around them.
Just on the issue about what, like with the Rodney King and how you start a story with Cook, they start it with him being arrested in that second episode. So for me as a watcher that doesn't really know the backstory of this, I'm thinking, wait, was he part of the problem?
Yes.
Because I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Is he a corrupt?
You're right, actually.
Yeah. That is very confusing.
Is he going to end up being corrupted by this story? Is he going to do something really bad that's going to mean he ends up making it worse?
Which I don't want to give away. I think that is so interesting to me because two things. Yeah. That world, I lived in Greenwich not far away when Daniel was murdered, and it's the same nexus of corrupt cops, Masonic lodges as well, tabloids, Stephen Lawrence, and Underworld, right? So it's the same cops involved in covering up the Stephen Lawrence murder. And that sense of murder, the language I would not repeat here, it is a very scary world. And what is interesting, and this is where Brooks, they talk about Maranchak. There's this scene with Dave Cook, who's a Maranchak, or actually it's Murdoch who says that later, but she says, I don't really know much about that. She would have been steeped in that law. She joined News of the World in the late 80s. And what was known, and this is the most incredible thing, known by Piers Morgan, known by all the editors, these guys have been arrested twice for murder, right? And there'd been an inquest that come out, they planned the death, and it was axe to the head. And what do? They go, oh, they're a bit dodgy. No, let's employ them. No, just one
hundreds
anecdote.
of thousands of pounds is the figure that's introduced in this episode. Is the amount of money News International has given to Southern Investigations for over many, many years.
Oh, I mean, 100,000 a year. They were quite wealthy, and they were given money before the Daniel Morgan murder. But just to explain, maybe you get. It's very difficult to get the sense. I went to college with a photographer, right, Jonathan Buttmaster. Many years later, when I was doing the podcast, I realised he had taken the photograph of the murder scene with the blood on the floor and the Golden Lion pub. This is where Daniel's axe to death in the car park. And I said, could you want to talk about it? And this is like 2015. No, I don't want to put my head above the parapet.
Really?
So people are still scared.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see as the story goes on whether they can sort of spell that out and sort of inform the reader or suggest inform the audience or suggest that to the audience about what's the overhang here, what's the long shadow that's been cast.
And on that point about being scared, I think that's why it is useful to show Cook's family in this, because everybody has a family. Everybody has a weakness, something that can be leveraged, even if it's just the fear of we're tailing your kids to school, we're poking a camera in your window at night when you're already traumatized from Jill Dando, that sort of stuff, that him having a weakness, and that not necessarily everybody who might have the intention of doing good but doesn't well, basically there may be people that want to do good who are in positions of power like Cook but can't because they have a weakness.
Yeah.
I think that's what stood out for me, because I don't know anywhere near as much about Daniel Morgan and the investigations as phone hacking, but I felt that as this episode went on and we get introduced more to the News of the World surveillance van and them having to meet with Rebecca Brooks and learning about Marinchuk and all this, it feels like Dave Cook and his family's experience is kind of being presented as a vignette of the wider abuse that people received from News International, which is, of course, very important. And, it is direct interference in a police investigation, which is the real...
The top police, the most sensitive. And it happens in the 5th investigation. The suspects, it's not in the show, I don't know, there's some sort of question about, because it's from an intercept, that before... It's Ian Blair is the commissioner. They said, we're going to do a 5th murder inquiry, right? And the bad guys at News of the World are talking about it before anybody else knows. They have such high-level access. I'd say one more thing about this. I'm not sure this will be clear because we only started in 2004 or 5. That's where we go back to. When Jonathan Rees is arrested in the 3rd murder investigation, which we don't see so far anyway, they put a bug in the offices and they find out they're doing all these crimes. 40 media crimes, right? The police do nothing about that. And then they put him into prison, not on the Daniel Morgan murder, for fitting up a woman with cocaine. I think it's a custody dispute. They use crap, and this rich jeweler wants to get custody of his kids, so Jonathan Rees goes and plants cocaine in her car and gets a police officer to find it, right? He's sent to prison for 5 years, and that's when Glenn Marquette operates. Basically, Southern investigations were the dark arts. And phone hacking becomes a big thing only when Jonathan Rees goes to prison. I don't know if it's mentioned in this episode, there's a guy called Greg Miskew, who I've met, sadly dead now. He was they're both Ukrainians, oddly enough.
Yeah.
Marinchuk had a Ukrainian background. He was running Southern investigations, Sid Philly, Kopp, and Jonathan Rees. And Miskew developed Mulcair. And I always said this, and maybe this will come across in the show, phone hacking was the nice side. That was the benign side. And they went over to that. There was some legal arguments about how much money Southern were getting. And I don't think, people realise that.
Yeah. The reviews have been mixed of the show so far. I don't know if you guys have been watching or reading any of the reviews. I picked out in particular the Telegraph's review, which picks up the Guardian's review. And it says, a show about the Guardian, so bad even the Guardian gave it 2 stars. The Guardian was also quite ungenerous.
There's been 2 in the Guardian, I think, haven't there?
I think so.
I've read the Lucy Mangan's one. Yeah, which
that's
is
the 2-star one. I don't think I've read the other one. I don't know if it fares a little bit better. Do we feel like that's a fair
I was shocked by the last paragraph of that Lucy Mangan Guardian review. I was really shocked by, because she compares it and says the way the show represents it makes it seem like phone hacking was a kind of quaint relic of the past. This is someone writing for The Guardian, the paper that exposed the extent of criminality and corruption, to not mention anywhere in that article. Again, it's an absence of context, even within the review. We know that the show lacks the context and lacks the kind of, the world building, as we might call it. But then for a review to not even say, this is a real misfire, and just to treat the story that they're watching in this show as a kind of nice little tale, rather than something that cuts to the heart of our politics and our media system. I found it very, very strange that in The Guardian itself, they felt that may have just been, a funny consequence of the show itself, that it doesn't have this context. But for the review to sort of skirt over the significance of reviewing The Guardian, to skirt over the significance of the hacking scandal, I was really shocked by, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's good that The Guardian has the leeway to criticise.
Sure.
It's one of its iconic stories. And I think what Lucy Mangan was saying, that's the danger of the show, making it seem a bit quaint. I, having been a television dramatist for many years, ignore all reviews. I'm more interested. Are people around you, Femi? Are you meeting people who are talking about it, or are we the only ones watching it?
Not at all. I don't know. Well, I don't have many friends, but
We'll change that.
I'm not hearing it from my circles about this story because I think because the phone hacking scandal just seemed in the cultural zeitgeist, it seems to be this thing from a long time ago. People don't really see the relevance of it today.
But the same as the post office scandal. I remember, what's that? That's ages ago. But it caught fire.
Because it was a story that they grounded in the real suffering of ordinary people, whereas the primary failure of this story is that the only characters we're seeing are top police officers, top journalists, top politicians. We're not seeing your average Joe and how this sort of stuff affects them.
Yeah, and at a time where people are really rejecting kind of elitism, establishment, institutions, this might be harder to kind of really tap into the cultural zeitgeist of now. My timeline is dead on it. The only people tweeting about it are, people like John McDonnell. Shout out to him, love him. But only those people in politics with a particular political interest seem to be talking about it. There's the hacked off stuff as well. So it does feel like it's happening in just quite a niche area of the internet, the discourse around it. But it's not broken out of that yet.
I suppose it's worth saying that we have gone ahead and watched episodes before the live broadcast of the second episode. So it may just be that we're the only people in the country who have gone and watched it on ITVX. And the broader audience might, I'll wait until next Wednesday to watch episode 2.
But did that happen last time? I was a bit surprised they put them all on ITVX.
That's just the way of the broadcasting world.
It's the
now.
modern world.
Did they do that? No, but did they do that with Mr. Bates and the
Mr. Bates, I'm not sure.
I
but I do
think
know
they
that
did.
ITV loved to brag about the fact that every time a new episode of Mr. Bates was broadcast live, it was one of the most watched shows on live TV that evening.
I have interior information. I better be careful what I say. I think ITV are not bearing this a bit.
I also just don't think it's a smart play to do. I think when you think back to like traditional era of television, even like Game of Thrones, not that long ago, it's all about the conversation that happens on the new information that comes out in the new episode.
And what's going to happen next.
So dumping all the episodes and then just sprinkling it out on live, it doesn't feel like a smart way to do it if you want to actually steer the public conversation towards this. And when you said about it all being top level, I think that's part of the problem. I think the people that wrote this show wrote it for people that are politically engaged, that have heard of the hacking scandal before, that will hear names in this show and think, oh yeah, I know that person. I've heard that before. Most people haven't.
And I will say in general, like it's TV discourse, in my opinion, is also kind of dying. I think we've gone through these halcyon days of where TV just, you wake up the next day and your timeline, there's too much to watch. Everyone's watching is highly fragmented. I think our timelines are increasingly highly fragmented, algorithmically as well. So we might be going through a period now where actually we don't have those days where you wake up and everyone's watched Succession and we're all talking about it the next day, or
that was only last year.
Whatever. It was 2 years ago, Peter.
Oh, time's flying by.
But things have changed. There's been some really good TV on, and I've been to myself, I've never heard of that show. I was watching the Emmys the other week, and all these shows were winning, and I was like, what's this? This looks amazing.
And even on Netflix, they bubbleize you, don't they?
Yeah.
If you like something, you'll just get stuff like that.
But I think that business reason is why I think ITV released it all at once on ITVX, is because they need to get advertisers, or they need to get money from advertisers. They need to show advertisers, we've got people watching our programs. You should buy an advert from us on ITVX because we've got this audience. So putting their show up early, all at once, it may only be a 1% increase in the amount of people that are watching the show online, but that's advertising money.
For some reason, I don't get ads on ITVX.
Oh, you subscribed.
Oh, damn it!
There we go.
But that point about the commercial reason, that it annoys me because it's a lack of courage, because it's based on the idea, I think, of if we put them out at once a week, then what if there's a bad episode and the ratings drop significantly for that episode, and then we have to go to our investors or whatever to say, all right, why is it so bad this week? And so they think if we just put them all out, then at least we can get this big bang where everybody starts watching it, and it's cowardice for me.
Well, you'll know, Peter, the whole business of TV writing is a risk from the start. You go into it saying, we're going to make a 7-episode series. And as soon as you made that decision and you've got the commission, you've made a huge risk. And it's not until 3 years later you discover if it pays off or not.
And my fear is, on the terrestrial audience, that will drop off into, because it's such a different world.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, I don't know if you're a Marvel fan, but you can complain about the commercialization of content. It's your fault, you guys. You're funding it.
I think it's. We really hate the fact that they keep churning out three films a year. We miss the days where it would be a huge event, one every year. And
every year.
This is what the fandom want then.
Yeah. We wish it was back to that.
But that
One
is,
every decade, please.
The quality was so much better back in the previous.
But that is overall the decline of audiences generally. Movie studios, TV studios,
absolutely.
broadcasters, they are really struggling to keep people watching stuff over and over again, and they're struggling to get money from advertisers.
But not on this podcast.
No.
Millions are tuning in. Let's move to something a bit more light than the kind of decimation of our TV and film industry. I think it's set. I think is the whole episode set in 2002. Can't remember if we jump around a little bit.
a little
Obviously
bit.
It starts a bit later with the whole arrest thing.
Yeah.
But what is the most 2000s then thing that we thought we saw in the episode? I don't know if I have anything for this.
I
that
think
was distinct
nothing's
from-
changed since 2002.
God.
It's very difficult, isn't it? Because I know the story back to 87 where I could show any car, the big self, they had, Daniel had this huge, poser phone, his car phone.
Yeah.
I couldn't see, because has anything changed since
And you don't see
2002?
anyone's phone or anything or nothing.
No,
that
you've
tells
got the
us
sort of
it's-
old-fashioned brick 3210 style of phones. You see them briefly because that's
Oh,
what
do
Dave
we?
Cook is using when he's contacting his officers.
Yeah, they don't have smartphones. They're just ordinary text phones. That's the only thing I could think.
But again,
Still a
it's
thing.
Yes, that's a good point. Crime
Crime
Watch has
Watch
been
still
decommissioned. We were talking about this earlier before you got here.
Is it the sort of thing?
I don't think it exists. So
Yeah.
that felt quite dated when I saw that, and I was like, "Oh, Crime
and that
Watch."
was, we've been talking a lot about the need for archive footage and to ground it in the time. Seeing the Crime Watch introduction with a little bit of old
they use the
TV
music?
static over the
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think
That
so.
was quite nice. I was like, oh, I feel like I'm actually in
Yeah.
2002 now.
There we
Both of
go.
these episodes have kind of existed outside of time.
Dum, dum, dum.
There's not too much in them that makes you feel like I'm in 2002, I'm in 2009.
Yeah,
Hearing
yeah.
the Crime Watch themes, like, oh yeah, I remember this.
Yeah. That world building is important to do, isn't it? Right, I think we're going to wrap up there, guys. Thank you very much. Do you want to see a better media in the world? Then you should check out the Better Media Bill and the Better Media Fund. And if you want a better media, then support the Impress Regulator as well. You can find out how at the link list bettermedia.world, which has links to loads of great ways to get involved and making a better media for all. Thank you very much for joining me. See you next time.